Okay. See, now it's out.
The woo-weary sighs.
It's okay.
All right, so what's the controversy?
There's not wiggle room on the facts that are there so much as there is wiggle room in the historical record of story.
Take a breath.
I will take a breath.
Take a breath. That's not the source of this work.
But that's why archaeologists keep digging too.
Now at the end, you be the judge. There is certainly a lot to consider in the complexity of this mystery. Welcome to Into the Unknown with Mike and John, Season 3, Episode 8. We love a good mystery, and this is a good one. It's got ancient history, paranormal elements, and plenty of room for debate. Debate.
Okay.
Season 8 debate. It's Mystery Hill, New Hampshire, also known as America's Stonehenge.
It's got lots of names.
It does. And I'm Mike Duber. That's the only name I'm going to keep today. That's my only name today, Mike Duber.
And I'm still John Fitzpatrick. That's right. One name.
One name, John.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, good. All right.
We're all one named.
Whew.
Because Mystery Hill has enough names for all of us.
It does.
Okay.
It has. It's got plenty, and it's just, But we're going to dig into
Patty's
all the
Cave.
reasons. Patty. Yeah, you're saying Patty.
Petit.
I was thinking Petit. I like Petit.
I think it's
see.
Patty, but
I think
yeah,
it is Patty too.
Yeah, that's okay.
But Petit rolls a little easier.
And then we'll
find out.
We're going to have all those New England pronunciations that are sort of closer to the British pronunciation, but not exactly. It'll be great. It'll be fantastic.
Okay.
I love this.
I'd be curious to see what you're talking about.
I have been looking forward to Mystery Hill for a while.
All right,
okay.
Good. Yeah. Well, there's plenty to debate. And we'll see. Let's just dive in.
Okay.
All right, so Mystery Hill, or as it is also known, as you know, America's Stonehenge, is indeed a bona fide mystery. It's tricky. It's polarizing, and it's fascinating.
It may even become polarizing in this room.
It's not.
Okay.
Because I'm going to defang all of that.
Oh, God. Okay. You're going to do my job? We really are switching.
You warned, the warno was, you're going to be an asshole, and I really am not in the mood for that.
I don't want to be. I don't want to be.
So don't. It's a choice, John.
It's a choice.
Choose not to be an asshole.
Okay.
Just present the information. Because, spoiler alert, I think everybody's on the same page. It's a mystery, and it's as simple as that. Now, opinion can come in. We'll get to that.
Okay.
All right. So as you can tell, folks, it's very polarizing. But it's also fascinating. It's a historical site that offers opportunities for understanding the challenges archaeologists of all stripes, that is the armchair and the expert, that what they face when dealing with potentially paradigm-shifting evidence. Now, paradigm shifting, you ask, Well, Mystery Hill is one site among hundreds, along with hundreds of artifacts, probably thousands actually, that are part of the ongoing investigation to determine, not only who placed all of these artifacts and things around the United States and the Americas, but also who, if anyone, from ancient Europe, the Mediterranean, or the Middle East, was here in North America before 1492. Now that's that magic year prior to which no one could have visited the Americas, according to the standard accepted story. Now, as you may or may not be aware, that theory, along with other long-held theories, is in fact fading with each new discovery.
I'm just going to let that go for
Yeah,
the moment.
that's
Let's see where you go with
Yeah,
that. Let's see where you go, because I think I know
theories
what
are
you're going to
fading.
start
Well,
with. Okay, go on.
I mean, you can anticipate all you like.
I'm anticipating. I'm anticipating fun.
So we will take it's not if you are setting yourself up to be an asshole. I can hear it already. It's in your voice. All right. So we'll take a close look at Mystery Hill as a single site, but then, we're going to briefly look at some surrounding context to see if it sheds any light on the mystery. All right. So let's start with a description of Mystery Hill. Now, by definition, Mystery Hill is a historic site in southern New Hampshire where megalithic or large stone constructions were erected by an unknown group of people. Thus, the mystery or mysteries. There are few to unpack here. And more specifically, the site sits on a low, rocky hilltop within approximately 100 wooded acres outside the town of Salem, New Hampshire. Now, that name gets a lot of mileage in New England.
It does,
Salem,
yes.
there's Salems
There's Salems everywhere,
which is really weird.
Well, not entirely. Salem
No,
it's a
weird.
biblical,
I'm just saying.
It's a biblical
it's
name.
a biblical name.
And
but
it
it's
just means
like,
peace.
How many Salem towns do you need?
Well.
Anyway, New Salem, Old Salem.
Okay. West Salem, East
Yeah,
Salem.
I mean, there's so many names. Anyway, now concentrated in about 3 acres is where the stone constructions sit. Now, they are a series of walls, chambers, open areas with placed standing stones that strongly suggest not only ceremonial use, but astronomical alignment as well. Now, although most of the stones used in the construction are reasonably sized, that is, easily manipulated by 1 or 2 men, and they are dry constructed, that is, without mortar, a few could be considered megalithic, that is, very large stones. Now, one particular stone, the so-called sacrificial table, weighs in at 4.5 tons. Now, there are ceiling stones that are equally large, but despite the naming correlation with the Stonehenge of England, Mystery Hill is nothing like those massive stones in England. The English megaliths are 25 to 30 tons. And there'll be show notes to show you what we're talking about if you're not familiar with Stonehenge. Now, for reference, 30 tons is about the weight of 5 male African elephants. That's a lot of weight. Now, the link to UK Stonehenge is simply that both sites have celestial alignments. Now, Mystery Hill stones were quarried from the local area. Now, they were not moved over many miles from a different location, as is the story in England. Now, stone on the site shows evidence of being worked by stone hammering. So to be clear, we are not talking about laser precision cutting or finish, like, say, the facing stones on the Great Pyramid. Now, as stated, standing stones or monoliths have proven to align with various sun and moon alignments, such as the summer sunrise solstice and others. So what makes this site a mystery, and what about it is tricky for researchers? Now let's dig in with a timeline, and this will start to illuminate some interesting aspects of the story. Now, the earliest era that we should mention here is 5000 BC to 2000 BC. Signs of early visitation have been discovered by researchers that is unrelated to the stone construction, but the hill was visited enough that people were leaving things there. Now, I was unable to find anything other than that it's mentioned. There are findings, but all the sources that I ran across are scant in that time era. We really don't get into diagnostic artifacts until the next era, which is called the prehistoric era. Now, that's 2000 BC to approximately 1600 AD.
Oh, that's a nearly 4,000. That's a 3,600 year period. That's
right.
broad. Okay,
Yeah.
just want to make sure
it's a long era. But I mean, this is how even in the sites that I've come across, this is how they are presenting it.
Yeah, sure. No, I'll let you go.
Now, this is where there is the first site-specific dating. Now, specifically what I'm talking about is the carbon dating of charcoal. Now, quickly, charcoal is the gold standard of dating material. Everyone agrees on charcoal for its precision in dating. Now, found on site in context with the structures, it places original construction at approximately 2000 BC. Now, really what that's saying is the structure could be older, but currently there's no one is saying that, and there's no proof per se, but that is to say that construction and the earliest evidence are coexistent, which means the stone was there when the charcoal was burned within the enclosure. Now, diagnostic artifacts, the things inhabitants would have used, were discovered and dated to about the year 0, or 2,000 years ago. What was found were lithic or stone tools, projectile points, and pottery that suggests significant Native American presence, specifically the Pawtucket. Now, additionally, many of their living and workshop sites are known in the surrounding region, but their habitation peaked between 0 and 1000 AD, leaving a gap of time until the next era known as the colonial period. So if you're following there quickly, the living and workshop sites, living sites would be where they would cook and sleep and make a camp. And then workshop sites are going to be where they're creating their implements, their projectile points and stone tools. All right. Now let's move on to the colonial period. This is 1600 AD to 1800 AD. Now the early 17th century is when Europeans arrived en masse to colonize the New World. And New Hampshire is frontier for much of this period. The province of New Hampshire was established in 1629, and in this era, the French and Indian War, as John is very familiar, 1754 to 1763, was waged, and this area saw action against the French and their Indian allies. You want to mention anything about the war here? I know that's one of your favorite.
I mean, it
topics.
is. And New Hampshire was. No, I don't really have anything specific about this. New Hampshire in this area, because it's southern New Hampshire, was probably reasonably safe. I mean, the northern areas,
It was a through
but
area.
That raises an interesting point. There were Indian raids into the northern populated parts of the colonies. I hadn't really considered the overlap here.
Yeah.
And I'll have to think about that some more.
I only reference it because it's a moment in history that we talk to a lot.
Well,
mostly I'm focusing that it seemed to be that what I could find, it was frontier area.
Yeah, it was.
And it's probably just
frontier.
a throughway.
Yeah.
For different groups.
Well, there were a lot of farmsteads in that area in the time. The one I would be familiar with is a little bit further northwest from this corner of New Hampshire, where Robert Rogers' family moved from Massachusetts colony to New Hampshire when he was a young man, and then he left from there and sort of adventured west into the New York colony, and eventually became the founder of his ranger unit. One of the reasons they went to New Hampshire was that it was much more sparsely populated, and each of the homesteads was much more self-sufficient. And I do want to lay some of that groundwork, because as I am rethinking about this, we'll probably come back to it. But I want to let you do your thing, make your argument, lay this out.
What argument do you think I'm making?
I don't know yet.
See, that's my fear.
No.
Like, this is.
I don't know yet. I don't mean argument like we're going to have a fight about it. Fisticuffs. I just mean like lay out your evidence, lay out your story, and say these are my conclusions, and make an argument in that sense. A logical argument, a philosophical argument, not a.
I'm presenting information here, and I do come to my own conclusions. But,
but I do expect to push back at something at some point because and we'll get to that. But let's get through the story. Let's lay out the mystery here, and then we'll see what happens.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right.
That's all I mean.
I can hear the engine.
Relax.
No, I'm relaxed. I find this because I'm conducting a tiny little bit of an experiment, but that's okay.
Ooh, I'm being experimented.
You are.
Okay.
You are. Well, you always are.
I know. It's okay.
That's just it's my training. All right. For a little context, we're gonna keep going right beyond that statement. For a little context, in this area of colonial habitation, in addition to Mystery Hill, numerous one-story stone chambers, averaging in size from 15 feet long, 10 feet wide, and 8 feet high, were discovered across New England. Now, some are up to 30 feet in length, and some were completely buried, discovered only through digging. Some were built into hillsides. Others were partially buried with trees growing through them. And at the time of discovery in this colonial era, it was indicating, these trees were of age of approximately 250 years. It appears at a minimum some of these weird stone constructions are being discovered and have been there for a while. And for a while, 200, 300 years and so forth. Maybe even older, longer.
I'm sorry. Are you saying that in
context?
In context, in the Mystery Hill context. Okay. All right.
Yeah, like in New England, along with Mystery Hill, there are other stone structures being discovered.
You're saying across New England.
Across New England.
Okay.
There were and these will become to be called root cellars, which is a common term that you may hear us say a lot. Okay, so all were made of large stones with roof slabs of several tons. Many had elaborate smoke holes and recesses built into the walls. So, just these very strange constructions were found by the colonial inhabitants of this time. Now, these constructions were accepted as remnants from the indigenous tribes and put into use by the colonists as root cellars. Now, some were used for distilleries and, of course, others for the Underground Railroad. We're going to get to that. But this is the commonly accepted use for these discoveries and soon became an argument that these were constructions of the farmers. But many investigators have concluded there is no evidence of the colonial farmers having constructed them. We're going to get into a little bit of that a little bit later on. Okay, now on to the next era. We've just covered the colonial period. That was 1600 to 1800. Now is the Petit era, Petit family era, from 1802 to 1850. Now, this era has much better documented habitation. Now, the family of Jonathan Petit, I'm going to say Petit.
That's fine.
Whatever.
I don't think
Just rolls off the tongue.
Sure.
He's purchased the property of Mystery Hill and lives there from 1802 to 1850. Now, for a time, Petit allowed paupers to live there. Now, in this era, it is suspected that up to 40, maybe even 60% of the stone from the structures was hauled away by contractors for dams and bridges. Now, even that number is debated, but they believe that a good amount of stone was taken away. It's readily available. Why not grab it and use it? Now, obviously, this era of damage and dismantling of the structures will make later interpretation of the sites significantly more challenging and, for the most part, untrustworthy. Now, not completely without value, but if we don't know the original configuration, we're going to be just guessing at, what the originals looked like. And nothing approaching proof based solely on the structure would ever be accepted from this point forward. Now, incidentally, I mentioned here, this is why you would turn to a larger context and see what it can tell you. When in doubt, zoom out, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Now, it's worth noting also in this era, Mystery Hill, along with the other mysterious root cellars dotting the New England landscape, served as waypoints on the Underground Railroad. And I'm just going to skip over that big section.
Sure.
But it just describes the Underground Railroad. I think most folks are going to know what that is. But they used the root cellars as places to hide for the enslaved folks that are trying to escape north, to include the part of the Petit structures. Now, we move into the next era, 1850 to 1937. The Petit era is over. Jonathan Petit has died. From 1850 to the next era that starts in April 1937, then this is a large jump, but it's been characterized as the logging era, mostly in the era in the early 1900s. So we would assume no occupation per se, but presence for resource gathering, for sure, both timber and possibly rock. And it may be likely at this time itinerants continue to use the site. Now, at this point in this era, I will note the following. The structures here are not subtle, and people are aware of Mystery Hill and the many, many other structures in New England of varying sizes. But up to about this time, no one considered an older or ancient origin for them. Now, unlike previously, when it was assumed the constructions were made by the native groups, it was now assumed that these were built by the colonial farmers. Now, I think this is the era where the concept of the quote-unquote savage is beginning, or is maybe even taken hold. And this is to say that, we're going to say that the farmers built these as opposed to ascribing the construction to the indigenous. But I didn't dig there. I tried to avoid digging in all the places.
Say savage was probably something that goes back to the earliest European settlers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the Puritans came over and barely considered them human. They thought, we're here by divine right. God has given us this pristine, uninhabited wilderness to go forth and multiply in. And uninhabited, clearly because they considered the people who are already living there just savages and animals.
Whether it's a bear or a deer or this thing here.
Right. So I think, but there probably is a resurgence of this, a shift, and there's probably also this is definitely the era of the noble savage coming to the fore in American literature, because this is when Fenimore Cooper's writing. So there is a resurgence of that idea for sure.
Yeah, but you also have Manifest Destiny. So we don't want to give them too much credit, lest we think they're worthy of but having something handed back to them.
It's a cyclical idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I got you. And I only touch upon it there because there was a shift. At first, it was, hey, it must have been the tribes that built these. But then later it becomes, no, the farmers made them because the farmers are making use of them, which is a concept that we'll get to. Like, just because I'm using it doesn't mean I built it. Okay. Now, colonial farmers as the architects became accepted by archaeologists of these, again, of Mystery Hill and then all these other structures. Now, here's a little pushback. Hugh S. Morrison, and his working era was the 30s and 50s. Hugh S. Morrison was the chairman of the Department of Architecture at Dartmouth College and the leading authority on colonial architecture, don't you know? And he refuted this interpretation. He wrote extensively on colonial architecture in New England.
Okay.
So we've got this guy that's saying, no, the colonial farmers did not build these.
And he was saying that, what was his argument?
I didn't. Well, there's, if I recall from what I read, I didn't pull it in, but Hugh Morrison was making the argument that it's not mentioned in any of their literature. This is not something that they would have built. Lots of, if I recall, throwaway comments that an actual stonemason said, like, hauling stone is not the work of a farmer. They wouldn't have done these things. They might have cleared the field and moved rocks to the edge of the field, but they're not constructing with them. Certainly not structures like we're seeing.
I intend to take issue with that later, but continue on, please.
Well, you can take issue with Hugh. You can look it up and crap on his his opinion.
It won't, okay.
Yeah. And you can throw Dartmouth under the bus.
Yeah, that's fine.
In fact, in 1893, rumblings of doubt and interest erupted. An article in the Milford Journal of April 26, Daniel Fisk drew attention to the unexplained and mysterious features of the Upton Chamber in Massachusetts. This is one I'm going to talk about a little bit later, and that's why I sort of referenced there's a larger context. And this is one we'll look at just out of interest. Now, we can safely say the era of the antiquarian is occurring as well, but before you think that the idea of an antiquarian is a modern activity, the precursor to a modern archaeologist, before you think this is a modern activity of enlightened people, there are cuneiform records of Babylonian kings. We're thinking 3200 BC, ordering excavations at old temples and ancient construction sites in order to understand the knowledge of their creators. So this is, the idea of an antiquarian goes way back. We always have been interested in our own history. Okay, lots of concepts in here. Now we move on to the Goodwin era. This is April 1937 to 1950. In April 1937, William Goodwin buys the site and erects a fence around it to try and protect it from further destruction. You had, of course, the stonemasons dragging stones away. There is there's discussion of vandalism at this time. Now, what is really happening is really the beginning of protection of the site. And from here on forward, there's a decent sense of protection and acknowledgement of the site. Now, Goodwin executed some reconstruction of the site, and the suggestion is that he was guided by his belief that Irish Chaldee monks created the site. And you heard that right. Irish monks created the site. Now remember, we said the creation of the site was dated to about 2000 BC. So that means the Irish were here in 2000? Well, that's what Goodwin thought. Now, this is understandable, and it introduces doubt, right? So if he's reconstructing and making improvements to the site, was he guided by his belief and maybe, influencing how they went back together? Now, just for the record, the Irish Chaldee monks were a 9th to 12th century AD group of ascetic Christians, and that was his belief. But again, this is one of many theories that are debated. Now, in 1950, when Goodwin dies, Malcolm Pearson inherited the site and then, in turn, leased the site to Robert Stone. The Stone family, serendipitously named.
Yes. Okay.
Now, the Stone family, these are the current owners. Incidentally, Malcolm Pearson's family owned the Upton Chamber site. So these sites have some commonality in ownership as well. All right. Now we move into more of the modern era. This is the Stone family era from 1950 to the present. The Stone family eventually purchased the property in 1957. In 1958, it opened to the public. Now, currently, there's a visitor center containing artifacts and, of course, the well-managed site. Now, I've been there, and it's well-managed, well put together. Now, Dennis Stone, who is Robert's son, is the current owner and operator. It remains protected, and research continues. Now, of note, from 1960 to 1971, Geochron Laboratories of Cambridge, Massachusetts, conducted radiocarbon tests on charcoal found on the site. Remember, we like charcoal. It's easy to date. And these dates confirm occupation back to 2000 BC. But honestly, debate about these tests continue, claiming overall lack of context. So, just about anything that happens here, people jump all over it and debate it. It's really amazing. And again, I think it's because of its importance as a paradigm shift. Potentially, you don't want to give it short shrift, right? You really want to do good justice and look and see what the reality is telling you.
But in these, I think a lot of the debate has to do with the fact that in these eras you just covered, from Patty on, or Patty on, however you want to say it, there's a lot of well-intentioned mucking about with the site.
There absolutely is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mess, and I pretty much say that.
From
the good era,
you do.
Or there's there's a point where it's like, he messed with it, well-intentioned or not. And I'm not saying he was or wasn't. I don't really know if he was guided. He was envisioning something when he put the stones back together.
Now, in
or whatever he did.
Right. In your research about Godwin and his Chaldee monk theory, did you see evidence that he really thought that they were here in 2000 BC, or did he simply think they came over when they were active?
I noticed a disconnect.
Okay.
Obviously, when I had no knowledge of the Chaldee monks, I'm like, when were these people? 9th and 12th century.
Right.
Obviously,
my understanding was that Godwin, again, with best intentions, looked at the site and said, "Hey,
it looks like
based on my reading," because he never went. To any knowledge I have, he never went over to the British Isles, but he said, this looks like Chaldee monk architecture. And it does. I will tell you that's true. And if you're wondering, what does Chaldee monk architecture look like? Most people would have seen it in the Star Wars sequel movies, because the island where Luke Skywalker is finding that
is on Skellig Michael.
Yes. And that is Chaldee monk architecture. So it's just small
Yeah, so zoom down.
Plates of stones on top of each other.
If
Okay.
you zoom down to page...
all right. Well, then if I'm saying too much, just say no. We'll get to that. Okay.
There's a picture
All
of it. I mean, I provide it for us, so we can look at it and talk about it. No, you're not saying too much. I mean, this is what it's all about.
I just saw the opportunity to stop and sort of provide that visual and the fact that I know Goodwin did a lot of mucking about based on that theory and tried to recreate that.
Yeah, I'll tell you another thing that's debated about Goodwin is whether he was just how influenced he was by that theory or not. He may have made the observation and people ran with it, like, he's convinced, And
I know other theories are coming, but that was his operating theory when he bought the place, and part of the reason he did, because he was an antiquarian thinking, I'm gonna buy the place, and reconstruct it as it was back in its heyday. Yep, and that was, like I said, well intentioned, but
right. Yeah, and and also it's worth noting as well. Goodwin made intentional effort to clean the site up. Right, he's protecting it. He's probably clearing away debris of all description in there. If you've got itinerants in there, you've got waste, you've got midden piles in there. So he's probably cleaning that out. And but it's also suggested that in the Petit era, he built a house.
Yes,
on top
he did.
Of part of the structures.
Yep.
The itinerants were in there, so who knows what they constructed or tore down to make it livable space. It's a mess.
Yeah, and that's in some ways you'd think that sounds fine. Well, of course I want to clear away the modern debris. In other ways, that's exactly what the archaeologists need to be able to start saying, well, this stuff exists at this layer. Now this other stuff exists at this layer. Right. And if you're not commingling the layers, it makes it a lot easier to say this thing exists in this context.
Right.
So, okay. I'm going to shut up now.
You're good.
I know,
man.
It's fine.
You're good.
I know. I don't want to get
choices.
I don't want to get ahead of the.
I appreciate that.
I try.
Well, as always, what do I always tell you? There'll be room at the end.
Yeah. Yep.
And there always is.
Yep.
Because I'm always dying to know where your brain is.
Yeah. Thank you.
I do. I'm very interested, but I'm trying to save you from being a jerk.
Thank you.
Because I don't think it's called for here. You're not squashing anything. I don't think anybody's going to get squashed because I think everybody knows, and regardless of what you think of it, there's just no way to be confident.
True, but I will throw down the marker at this moment that if you look at the site, saying it's a Chaldee monk inspired spot probably is an easy assumption. Well, and because they do look similar, and I'll just throw that down there.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying they look similar.
And I'm going to put what I think is a possibility out there, and just by piecing things together. But I am not claiming I am an expert on this at all. I'm just looking. All right, now where was I? Quick break, folks. We'll be right back.
A big mystery.
That's right. Was that a big mystery? That's what it is. But let me just say, look, research continues on the site. They're doing good archaeology, and I mean that in the best of ways, right? Good archaeology is what John talks about, is looking at the stratigraphic layers, looking for artifacts, and being able to discern between them. All right, but I also highly recommend visiting the site. I did, and as I said before, and it's really fascinating. It's a neat place. All right, so let's move on. I did have here that we want to be able to talk about this without sort of too much controversy, but we'll step over that.
Wait, can I just? No, I want to do the. Okay, see, now it's out.
The woo-weary sighs.
It's okay. Okay, I got it out. Okay.
That was a good one.
All right.
That was a good one.
All right.
So what's the controversy? All right, so 1 and 2. Here are two pieces of narrative that tell you what the controversy is. It's not clear who built it. And there has been enough documented alteration over the years to challenge strict architectural interpretation. Now, at first, colonial farmers adopted the site, thinking the native tribes, specifically the Pawtucket, built it. Now, as time marched on, it was assumed to be the work of the colonial farmers who adopted it. So era to era, there were only assumptions and not much thought given to it or investigations conducted. And this is well before the archaeological research that occurs today. Now, in the Patti era, as we mentioned, 40 or 60% of the stone was carted off for foundation projects, and Patti was known by his son's account to have improved the structures. Goodwin also made his efforts to reconstruct the site, and it's possible his intent was pure, if maybe a little guided by his idea of Irish monks and what he might have imagined about monastic European sites. Now, the third controversy, artifacts seem to support native indigenous groups, and at the same time, artifacts that support European creation are present but highly suspect. Now, here's where we get into probably the more polarizing artifacts. In one chamber, researcher James Whittall discovered a triangular stone allegedly incised with Iberian Punic script, and it was interpreted by Barry Fell, a character we'll cover a little later, as Phoenician or Canaanite. So just to repeat, the Iberian Punic script was interpreted by Barry Fell as Phoenician. Now, it was translated to say this: "To Baal of the Canaanites, this is dedicated." It was found in a stone chamber on the site and dated to 800 to 600 BC, as judged by the alphabet or the characters used. Now, Baal was the god of the Canaanites, if you're not familiar with Baal. Interesting. Now, at a separate time in that same chamber, a stone found embedded in the wall was reported to have Ogham writing on it, spelling B-Bel, or, as it is translated, dedicated to Bel. Now, Bel is the Celtic sun god, a corollary to the Phoenician Baal. In Fell's book, Barry Fell, he admits that Ogham can be occasionally fortuitously produced. Now, these are straight parallel lines, after all, if you're not familiar with Ogham writing. But
we should put some of that in the show notes.
Yeah,
it's I think usually done vertically.
Right.
There's a vertical line, and then there are intersecting lines that cross it or connect to it more or less horizontally or at a slight angle, and that's how you tell the different letters.
Yeah.
But we should have an example in the show notes if we don't already.
Yep.
Okay.
And there are and this is what makes Ogham as a script highly debatable, because
it could look like notching. Yeah.
Yeah, and right, and we'll give you an example, and we'll show you, and it can be done vertically or horizontally, and it's above the line or below the line is how you deduce the different, pronunciations and so forth.
It would be contemporary with. I think it would start contemporary with Punic stuff, but Phoenician would be a little early. Although those two cultures are related too. Like the Phoenicians come out, settle Carthage, which is the Punic stuff.
And then
Carthage is existing at the same time as Rome, the Druids, Ogham, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So there is
the Iberian Peninsula as well.
Yeah.
You've got the Iberic Celts there too. I had looked up the earlier. I had looked up the date range for the creation and implementation of Ogham, and I forgot it, unfortunately. Again, this is such a huge story. There are really a lot of details on board. A lot of rabbit holes. Big. So this is why it took so long.
Yeah.
But anyway, Ogham, as you might imagine, again, we've talked about it as being sort of these, vertical and strictly just lines. Yeah. Some of the pushback, and I'll even pull forward some of the debate about it or the skepticism about it is they say, well, that stone could have been hit by a plow and had been gouged out. Now, I'm not particularly fond of that particular argument, but there are other ways that you could get markings on stones that may not be writing per se, but Fell covers these in his book, and by my estimation, at least what he's putting in his book as examples, they look like they are incised into the stone very deliberately and not just sort of random marks left by a plow or tree roots, which is another argument, which I have ghosted in there in the parentheses. All right, anyway, so let's see. Fell covers that in his book. What did he do later? But he finds more Celtic Ogham and other sites as far north as Vermont. So in case you're wondering, Barry Fell wrote a book about New England. As a matter of fact, all of the Americas and all the different proof that's out there. So that's a quite all-encompassing book. But he's talking about New England in his book here, where he's finding Ogham as far north as Vermont. Now, Barry Fell feels certain in his book that Mystery Hill is a Celtic creation. And that's his argument. And so I see John, that's one of the areas John will push back on us later.
But I'm going to do it later. We'll do it later.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, ultimately, the core speculation is that multiple European cultures visited and worshipped at Mystery Hill over the years. So, after its creation in the 2000 BC, that potentially it was used, perhaps intermittently, by visiting cultures, and it could have been in intervening times habitated by or occupied by the indigenous groups. But again, it's all speculation. Now, some other mysteries or controversies. Number 4, most would agree to similarities to European structures. John pointed one out between Skellig Michael and the Upton Chamber. We're going to get to that one. But cultural interaction, known as diffusion, is commonly rejected. And next, number 5, most controversially, the earliest accepted European arrival on the continent is Lansall Meadows in Newfoundland, as there are an abundance of evidence that is a Norse site, and that's dated to about 1000 AD. And that's the one that's very commonly accepted because of its
that is accepted.
Very clear evidence there.
And there are, since then, there's a site in Arctic Canada on the Hudson Bay, I believe, or not far from the Hudson Bay, the northern end of it, that they have also determined was a Norse way station of some sort. It may have been it was probably there definitely was trading going on there between them and the pre-Inuit people that live there. So there are at least 2 known Viking sites. Lansall Meadows is the easier one to get to. Now, I will pause here and simply say the Norse settlement at Lansall Meadows in Newfoundland was settled by Icelanders. And to go back to the Culti monks, as the Scandinavian people of the Viking Age moved west across the Atlantic, they continually found Irish monks there right ahead of them. Because as they would come in, the Irish monks seeking to be hermits would say, the neighborhood's gone to crap.
Yeah,
I'm going
west.
I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to be moving west.
Yeah.
But they managed to do it without the Viking longships. They were sailing in much shoddier. Right.
I get to all that later on.
Oh, okay. But it's
not necessarily that it was the Irish, but the idea that this is we'll get to it.
Yeah, but they found when they reached Iceland, they found a small settlement of Irish monks there. And if I remember correctly, and maybe it was just rumor, but believable rumor, when they got to Greenland, they found some there as well. So we're talking within striking distance of the North American continent proper, but I don't know of any accepted settlement of those
that's what it comes down to.
hermits.
That's what it comes down to, and
that's why this is an interesting case.
I'd be curious, and I would be curious to look at those stories about the monks that the Vikings are finding and see how much of that is accepted. just out of curiosity. And I think it's a
pretty
spectrum
well
of
accepted.
acceptance.
Yeah.
I mean, well, and since you opened the door,
Yeah, but I am
here's
opening that door
here's a
deliberately.
no-go area, and we'll pin this, but I will mention that the Viking runestone, or
Oh yeah.
shoot, it's in Wisconsin or
Yes,
Minnesota.
it is. It's Minnesota. Yeah.
And it's the Viking runestone, and this was discovered in, I think, like 1850, 1860, by a Swedish farmer that uprooted a tree, and it was embedded into the roots of the tree. And this stone has basically runic Viking runes on it, and it describes that they were hunting there and that they were passing through, and it's somewhat of a land claim as well. So
Yes,
and that gets into all the politics.
We're
going to pin it.
We'll pin that. But
pin it. We
but
gotta come back to that.
you hit the nail on the head when you said it was found by a
I know.
Swedish farmer.
I know.
Yeah, and there's a long
is,
tradition of that. In fact, that it touches this story as well.
It does.
But we'll get to that too.
And that's, if you go down to the discussion bullets.
Yeah, that's why I want to see
politics.
where you go, since I'm coming to this cold. And I should state that, is that it's not just that I don't want to be.
I thought you said you were doing a bunch of research on it.
I did. I'm coming to your version of this cold. I didn't read where you went.
Okay.
And I had to kind of anticipate the high point things that are usually pushed back on in this.
Yeah. I'm well aware of what's questionable and what's not. And,
that's why
but
I don't want to be the a-hole. I just want to.
It's a choice, man. It's a choice. We're just presenting information.
It's a choice.
And we're talking about it. But I'm interested in. I'm heartened by your thought about the monks preceding the Vikings.
But that's why these stories,
because that makes sense to me,
are fascinating. Is that there's not wiggle room on the facts that are there so much as there is wiggle room in the historical record of story about who comes over, and and I think most people recognize that human history, because humans are messy, is also messy, and then things happen, and
things happen that don't get documented,
things happen that don't get documented.
Things that happen that we haven't found evidence for,
right?
By saying I dug a 2-foot test pit, and therefore there are no dinosaurs in your backyard. It's like, well, 2 feet over you could find something,
right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I understand math, and I understand the odds, but.
And we've talked about this before with the archaeology, is that you can be dead set on that paradigm for decades, but there's always the possibility.
It just takes one thing to overturn it.
There's always that possibility that you find something in a rock solid context that changes that paradigm completely. That's what makes it interesting. But that's why archaeologists keep digging too. So let's keep going.
I'm not throwing archaeology under the bus, but I'm throwing on the spectrum of archaeologists, the guys that won't get up, let go of the paradigm when it's obvious, are the ones that bother me. Okay. Anyway, let's see. We had dated Lance Meadows to 1000 AD. Okay, so what really creates the mystery is the megalithic stone building at Mystery Hill. Now, the website states, large slabs of stone, astronomically aligned chambers, walls, and standing stones, and a variety of impressive monuments all point to the conclusion that an ancient culture of stone builders viewed this site as a temple. Now, plain and simple, debate rages whether the local tribes were ancient stone temple builders. Additionally, there is doubt that ancient civilizations possessed sailing ships that could cross the Atlantic. Now, that is not widely accepted despite plenty of evidence to support it.
I just described something.
I know, but what? Yeah. So what's the issue? You know what I'm saying? And I'll get to that. And that's funny because I mentioned the same thing. Both there are. I don't want to give it away.
Keep going. That's why I'm leery about just jumping in with this stuff, because like I said, I'm coming to your narrative here in the script cold. I don't know where you're going, and that's why I said I wanted you to lay out. Quote, your argument.
I interrupt you all the time.
I know, and it's fine. And because it's a partnership, we're supposed to be talking to each other. People come to this for the discussion. They don't come to hear an audiobook.
Although
maybe
we
they
would
do.
make some pretty good audiobooks.
We would, yeah, maybe we should.
Yeah, we'd have an offline discussion about the next project we've
Okay.
got. I do have a serious one in mind.
Oh, okay.
But for later.
Okay.
All right, let's look at some other mysteries about the site, okay? And really now we're getting into like this is just bloody interesting. There's that trap again.
Oh my goodness.
Caught me again.
Oh,
All right, I'm good.
you're okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Do you need a handkerchief or something to staunch bleeding? No? Okay.
No.
All right.
No. And as I look down, I did want to mention also that Fuzzy is in the
Fuzzy's
studio.
back.
Fuzzy's
Yes.
in the studio with
Fuzzy
us today,
is our
so-
guest dog. Yes.
Yeah, she's exuding calm as she naps there through the whole thing.
She might put me to sleep. Okay.
I know. Yeah, she looks so comfortable.
Except I'm so excited about this.
Good. It's turning out to be fun. All right, so other interesting aspects. First, we mentioned this, but the astronomical alignments. Now, the summer solstice sunrise on the site is remarkable. Alignment is not exact currently due to the obliquity of the ecliptic. Now, that's a big term for over time, the sun will stray at a known rate we can calculate. Now, this is the core of archaeoastrology that helps us determine what alignments might have been at a site at the year that it was created, or vice versa. For example, in what year was the sun exactly at the tip of the stone on Mystery Hill? In this case, the alignment was perfect in 2000 BC.
Okay.
So what we're saying here is, like, if I have a stone and I suspect that this is showing a certain alignment, and I see the sun is coming up and it comes up and it cuts the stone maybe in the middle, and you say, all right, well, at what year would it have cut the stone right at the point that the stone is perhaps using as a pointer? And when they rocked it back, they rocked the night sky back and all the alignments. It was 2000 BC. That's when that alignment took place. So that's very interesting. And that's archaeoastrology. Now, strange Google Earth alignment is the next interesting thing. Now, in a show by geologist Scott Walter, incidentally, Scott Walter is the geologist that looked at the Kensington runestone.
Okay.
Is the one that was out in Wisconsin.
Yes.
He was the one, as the geologist, looked at that. He learns from the son of Dennis Stone, the owner of Mystery Hill, that on Google Earth, if you draw a line away from American Stonehenge at the angle of the summer solstice towards the east, it passes through the Salisbury Plain and directly through Stonehenge.
Okay.
And they showed it on the show.
Yeah, I'm just trying to decide if
Now-
the Google Earth
So
aspect of that.
the
creates
entire
an issue.
mathematics
I don't know.
behind Google Earth is that if you were to strike a straight line on a globe,
Right.
that is it. It's
So-
going to, if you strike a straight line in Google Earth, it's going to map across the curvature of the Earth in the way you would expect.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm asking. Because if I have
Yeah.
a flat map and I take a ruler and I draw that line, then the problem that I'm introduced is the fact that I'm using a projection onto a flat surface of a round thing. You're
Well, that's
saying that
what the
because this is
mathematics-
Google Earth,
Yeah.
is that it's now accounting
Yeah.
for that? Okay.
Yeah, imagine a line of longitude
Okay.
goes from
Yeah.
North Pole to South Pole, right?
Right.
And it cuts straight across a curved object. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes.
And it's a line of longitude. Yeah. And so what I'm saying is, from the particular point in New Hampshire,
Yes. And you draw
at an angle that you draw it from,
Gotcha.
which is the solstice, that it goes. And
Okay.
I mean, I've used Google Earth enough in a previous life to
I had
be
not
trusting of like the mathematics behind
Right.
it.
I have not encountered this before. So
Yeah.
this I truly am coming too cold. So you will forgive me if
No.
my skeptical mind starts to say,
I agree.
are there
That's
any
a great
potential
question.
problems with this particular projection?
It's a
Like I
great
know
question.
there would be if I used a flat surface.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I don't know, since my math is bad,
I know.
notoriously
You're not a
so.
STEM guy. I get it.
I can only ask the question and I can't immediately say, oh, no, it's fine. Or no, there is a problem. It's just more like, that's going to take a lot more work than I'm prepared to do.
John, I am so proud of you. That's called healthy skepticism,
Okay.
as opposed to unhealthy. Okay, so it gets better. But wait, there's more. So not only does it go through Stonehenge, but he zooms in to Google Earth, because you can zoom all the way down, and Google Earth is so amazing that it now has 3D renderings of structures on the map face itself. It goes through one of the stone lintels. But wait, there's more. It goes through the stone lintel, and then it goes on directly and strikes the landmass of modern-day Lebanon, which, if you don't know, that's the home of the Phoenicians. Now, is that a coincidence? Who knows? And I honestly, this is what I've questioned. Like, when I'm in New Hampshire and I'm driving out to into the state, from the shore, where I presumably would have landed on a boat. Why the hell would I land on a boat and then walk so many miles? It's 30 miles, 40 miles inland.
I think it's about 100 miles from the coastline.
I don't think it's 100, but it's not close. It's not like right there.
It's not, no.
It's at least 40. So let's say 40 miles. Why would you land on the shore and walk 40 miles? But if I know, and somehow, as the construction guy, that I know that I have to put it somewhere here in order for that line to hit Stonehenge, which I am
This is where I'm going to be the a-hole, assuming that it's not a coincidence.
It could be a coincidence.
Right. But you're right. Why would it? That is a big coincidence. So
it's a pretty big one.
Let's start to think about what it would take to do it intentionally, and
so
see if that's any more or less plausible. Okay.
Right. Yeah. But there's a term that I start to apply to this, and we'll see if it makes sense. All right. And again, so I'm saying, could it be that's why Mystery Hill, as that specific hill, was chosen? It was far inland where seafaring people, why would seafaring people go all the way inland and place it there? And maybe it's for that reason. Now, let's look at the next. The next is the sacrificial table. Now, this feature is interesting for its grooved, stone-pecked runnels around the perimeter of the flat table, and a grooved outlet where presumably blood from sacrifices made on said rock would pour. Now, that's very fantastic, but that's what the suggestion is. And evidence suggests Phoenicians conducted human sacrifice, specifically infants. Now, however appalling, many agree, and here's a quote from an article, and I found it particularly apropos. Do you want to read the quote?
I'll read the quote.
But this does not come from me.
Okay.
It doesn't come from me. I'm just reporting what I found.
I know, but
this is what ties it together.
Okay, let me read the quote. Quinn admits that many of her academic colleagues were appalled by her conclusions, and this is in brackets, about infant sacrifice, on bracket, and that this is because it is a conclusion that no one wants to believe is true, like some taboo is being broken. Quote, we like to think that we're quite close to the ancient world, that they were really just like us. The truth is, I'm afraid, that they really weren't.
Yeah.
So I just listened to another podcast on this.
Yeah, okay. That's fine.
And it involved academics, and they pointed out that the libel about the Canaanites practicing blood sacrifice, particularly infant sacrifice, not to Baal but to Moloch, comes from a biblical source. And of course, it is common propaganda for any group to say, those people over there are practicing blood sacrifice and human sacrifice, and they're killing their babies. And the reason it's believable generally is, of course, no sacrifice is really worthwhile unless you're sacrificing something that's particularly precious. But on the other hand, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go killing your children.
Well, that's fine.
So,
and I'm sure
the evidence for this is
I presume
not,
that this is a skeptical podcast that you got it from. It is. But that's not the. But the Bible's not the source.
Yeah, the Bible is pretty much the source on the Canaanites being.
John, what I'm telling you is
their children to Moloch, and there's no archaeological evidence of it.
Take a breath.
I will take a breath.
Take a breath. That's not the source of this work. And I have the source down at the bottom. And what this person. Okay, listen.
Okay.
Listen. This person is claiming that the archaeological evidence, and I'm just representing the information as I found it. I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I haven't looked into it. But they said that there's the evidence, and the point that they're making comes from the stratigraphy found in sites at Carthage. And I had to avoid reading too deeply, but they said that there were too many infant and child carcasses that had otherwise no reason to have perished. And that was what they were drawing the conclusions on. And I would imagine to also presume that they were thinking about the Bible quote as well as maybe evidence to it, but they were pointing to specifically archaeology on the ground in Carthage in North Africa.
Okay.
So again, I hear you. I hear you. And I think what you're saying makes sense, right? Like if you're going to other a group of people, you make them baby killers, and then it makes it easier to wage war and slaughter them because they're baby killers and whatever. Yeah. But I totally get that. I just wanted you to be aware that was not the source of this.
Okay.
I'll put the link in the show notes, and if you're curious enough, you can go see it.
And I probably will go look that one up.
Yeah, and again, it's a whole paper. It's a whole academic paper as well.
Yeah, and I'm aware of the whole controversy around the sacrificial table.
And I only pulled all this together because in some of the content that I looked at, they're like, well, there's a table. It's got runnels. People were going to think it's a sacrifice, and that's the name it got. And so is there blah, blah, blah. And we think the Phoenicians were here. Did they sacrifice? Yes, they did, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we're stringing together a series of really fantastic information. And so you take away from it what you want. Okay. But let's dig a little more.
Keep going.
Let's dig a little more. And this is going to go long.
Folks. That's okay. I'm fine with long.
All right. Now, it seems that taboos are a common theme in archaeology, like the taboo that ancient humans could never have sailed across the Atlantic.
And they're always controversial.
Before 1300. More on that later. Okay. So was this rock table indeed used for sacrifices? Now, some North American native tribes also show strong evidence for human sacrifice.
Yes.
Specifically, the Mississippian culture of Cahokia. Now, this is where I start to bring in a little speculation, and I just questions. Was this a tradition brought here from Europe and carried on? Did the same tradition travel south to Central and South America, where sacrifice was rampant in Aztec and Mayan culture? It's unknown. Now, other theories on the table include this. I wanted to make sure that this was known.
Okay.
Some thought it was a cider press, and now Vesalius is the name, and I should have probably brought more of him in, but I had to cut somewhere. He's like, it's a cider press. In other words, you squash the grapes or whatever, or the apples, and the juice, right. And the juice runs out the little runnel area. It makes sense. Now, Mary Gage is another character you may have run across. She's a proponent of the indigenous creators. She said there's a water crystal ceremony, whatever. We can look that up if anybody's interested. But that was weird. There was also a Native American ceremonial water channel idea put out there. And then another, which was the 19th century farmers' practical use of, they used it as like a way to make soap or lye, to separate, just to separate content, and then the liquid would run off. It's a very, very mundane use. And that's interesting. That's the sacrificial table. Accurately named or not, I don't know.
Do you want me to interject here on the cider press theory, or do you want me to wait?
Well, the one other thing I'll say, and you can throw it in there if you want, but that the runnels show strong evidence, and it seems plausible to me that they were stone-packed. In other words, these runnels were not created by a chisel or metal implements. Okay. It was stone on stone chipping out the runnels. And so it just means a very primitive way of digging excavating the stone.
You use the stone to sort of...
a harder stone to
rub
chip
out,
away.
chip it out. Yeah.
So go ahead.
Okay, so again, another podcast, a conversation between Connecticut-based archaeologist Ken Fetter and Mayan expert archaeologist Jeb Card. they were talking about this. Dr. Fetter says it is definitely a cider press because he's seen two other examples that are identical. And one of them is in England, where the colonial people would have come from. And the other one is operational in Sturbridge, Massachusetts, which is a working colonial reenactment, much like Williamsburg. Sorry, I lost it because I was thinking I was trying to stay focused on the two archaeologists. They talked about how this is an example of something that was once very common technology, but because we've passed beyond it, when we look at it, we are completely mystified as to the purpose of it. And at that point, Dr. Card said, "Hey, I've seen evidence of sacrificial table in Mayan context, Aztec context. They don't have runnels because they don't care where the blood goes because they're not trying to collect the blood for anything. And he also said, he has said in other contexts that it's very much an indigenous tradition for the human sacrifice, because you brought up the possibility of it moving west from Europe over. So, there's a lot to unpack there.
That's a weird one. I mean,
I tend to go with the cider press theory myself. I know that's sort of the big
that
alternate
sounds
theory,
good, actually, because in my mind, again, what we know is that it's a multi-use site. I mean, and there's any number of people there who were using it. So it could have been that the stone was propped up the way it's found in situ. For whatever reason, it was placed there like that. And they said, well, this would be a great work table to do this or that. And they chopped the... that's an interesting theory.
Even the so-called sacrificial stone at Stonehenge seems to be a later addition to that monument, that it was not an original piece.
Yeah.
So
it's hard to know. They have an understanding of like the placement and the evolution of the site.
Yeah. So when we look at a site like this, and we know that it has evolved over centuries, we tend to romanticize it, and it's not uncommon to say, "Oh, that must have been used for a sacrifice of some sort."
Yeah. Well,
and look at the channels, that must have been used to channel blood.
Yep.
Who knows?
Yep. No, I got you. No, that's a good point. And I'd never heard the cider press theory, and I'd be curious. I probably will go look to see the examples to see.
And they may well look. He said they're identical, but identical to an expert is different from identical to us, especially since one is a working press that is kept and maintained, and this one has been left out in the open for God knows how long. So identical is in the eye of the beholder there, I will say. But you can begin to pick at the archaeologists for saying such things too.
And I want to hear what they have to say, because that's where you get the good ideas, right? And the more informed ideas. Hopefully you're listening to people that have looked across a lot of the different evidence and are coming away with good conclusions.
Well, that particular conversation between two trained archaeologists who are experts in very different areas was also fascinating, particularly about this sacrificial idea, where one of them deals with ancient societies, ancient cultures that had a human sacrifice tradition. Of the two, only Ken Fetter had been to the site because he's based in Connecticut. He'd been there several times. I may bring him up again later with some other observations he made, because they're cutting. They cut to the chase. Like, what about this? We'll talk about that as we go. But I just want.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll see if there's another opportunity to drop that in.
Okay. All right. Now another interesting observation is that what they call the passage chamber. Now this is an oddly shaped oblong structure, and it has a speaking tube, in quotes, a speaking tube that exits underneath the sacrificial table. All right. So, if you can imagine this passage chamber, again, it's oblong, it's more rectangular, it's longer than it is wide, so it's more of a hallway, if you can imagine a hallway, and that it's buried underground a little bit, and that there is, midway through, there is a tube that will come out underneath the sacrificial table. Now, that's all very interesting, and here's what it resembles to some eyes. Now, it has a passing resemblance to the passage tombs in Europe, which have their own debates about them being not just tombs. Now, it's theorized that they're used for what you would call resurrection rituals, used in certain mystery groups. Initiates symbolically die and are reborn through a series of rituals, and the east-west passages of these chambers is indicative of this symbolism of life and death. So they would die in the west and then move through the chambers in a series of rituals and be reborn in the east when the sun rises. Again, these are just observations. Now, the speaking tube is reminiscent of oracle sites. Indeed, it is called the oracle chamber, and its use would be for tricking an acolyte into whatever, who is in whatever state of mind that they may be hearing the voice of the beyond or a god of some kind. And so by speaking through this tube to the person that's on the outside of the chamber, they would be beguiled into thinking that they're hearing disembodied voices. Now, also used in the mystery rituals where an initiate is spoken to, it's a way to enhance the experience of someone who may be also potentially under the influence of some psychotropic substance, which was common in these rituals of resurrection. So that's the passage chamber. That's also very interesting. Now, at the end, you be the judge. There is certainly a lot to consider in the complexity of this mystery. And finally, here is what the official website claims, or they claimed at one time, because the website got a facelift recently.
Some theories have changed.
Yeah, very well. I think they just removed a lot of information, but there's a thought behind it.
You want me to read this?
Yeah.
Who built it? Built by a Native American culture or a migrant European population? No one knows for sure. A maze of man-made chambers, walls, and ceremonial meeting places. At over 4,000 years old, America's Stonehenge is most likely the oldest man-made construction in the United States. Like Stonehenge in England, America's Stonehenge was built by ancient people well-versed in astronomy and stone construction. It has been determined that the site is an accurate astronomical calendar. It was, and still can be, used to determine specific solar and lunar events of the year. Various inscriptions have been found throughout the site, including Ogham, Phoenician, and Iberian Punic script. Dr. Barry Fell of Harvard University did extensive work on the inscriptions found at the site. They are detailed in his book, America, BC.
All right. Well, there's Barry. We're going to talk about Barry just a tiny bit.
I'm waiting.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because there's just too much ire-monger in that. All right. So we're about ready for a break, and we're going to take our break. But I'm just going to tell you, on the other side of the break, there's a surprise.
There's a surprise? Is it a surprise guest?
Nope.
Of sorts?
No.
Of sorts?
Of sorts, sort of. A surprise topic. So we'll be right back. Hey gang, we're back. And guess what? We're going to pivot.
Yep.
We're gonna again.
You know how we told you there was a surprise coming? Guess what?
There's two of them. There's a surprise that will spring on you next week, and the second surprise is that we're going to make this 2 episodes. So we'll see you in another week for a continuation of Mystery Hill. And we're really glad you're joining us. If you find this interesting, leave us a note on our social media. Right, John? Do you want to?
Oh, the social media. So let me. I was not prepared for this. So we have Facebook.
Yeah.
We have a Facebook page that is Into the Unknown with Mike and John, and then there is a Facebook sort of conversational group that is set up but nobody uses. I'm kind of waiting for you guys to do that. There's an Instagram page as well.
Okay.
Right. Everything I do identical on those two. And then because strangely enough, I tried to set this up so that they would feed each other, but the Instagram page actually feeds my personal Facebook page.
Okay.
So all my personal friends can see it.
Okay.
And then there, like as I keep saying, there are some Easter eggs out there on the internet, which is a vast place, so it's hard to find, but somebody will eventually. That also mirrors the stuff, but might have some other information with it as well. Might be more another personal type page where I put everything. But that's our social media. Of course, we have our actual internet web page where that's sort of the hub for everything. It links out to the shows. It links out to the Facebook. It links out to the Instagram.
And there's resources if we put pictures together that we pulled down, and we can post them there for you all to go see them.
Yeah, all the well, not all the books we've mentioned, but a number of the books we've mentioned are used. We probably should do more with that. So Facebook, Instagram, webpage, all the social media. Okay. Good stuff.
Well, I appreciate
Good
that,
stuff.
John. Yeah. Thanks for letting us know that. And we're gonna send it. We're gonna close this one out, and we will see you next week for again the continuation of Mystery Hill.
Mystery Hill, America's Stonehenge.
What other names? We'll think of one, maybe a third name to call it, but that'll be next week. All right.
Okay.
See you next time.